Well, Matt, thanks for being on the show today. Excited to talk about what you do in your career field. You are a live illustrator. So I
That's
guess to
right.
start, let's explain what that is, and then we can talk about how you got into this field.
Sure. I'm a live illustrator. I am all ears. I attend conferences and meetings, strategic planning meetings, panel discussions, sales meetings, whatever it is. And I am in the room and I am drawing what I hear. So unlike a court reporter who's drawing what they see, I'm the exact opposite. So I'm taking notes. I'm taking giant sketch notes for everybody and putting it on a giant 5 foot wide panel or larger or sometimes smaller for everyone to see. So over the course of a day, I create about 100 square feet of artwork, illustrations. I mean, it's not. I'm not Leonardo da Vinci, mind you, but I'm collecting notes for everybody. So people take pictures and they bring it home. They show their boss and say, "This is what I learned at the conference," and kind of creates a giant wall of what was talked about over the course of 2 days or 3 days,
Yeah.
or what have you. So I enjoy it. I get to learn a lot about a lot of different things, and that makes me dangerous. So enjoy it.
And we're going to talk about it too, your company, Big Paper Strategy. People can look it up online.
Yeah.
I think you did a good job, but again, just for clarity's sake, for people who aren't sure, what does that mean exactly? So you're writing out or you're drawing what people are saying? Or how would you describe that?
Well, I say you have a keynote address. Someone's up speaking over the course of an hour, and they're talking about bravery in the workplace. So maybe they wanted to take chances. So that over the course of that hour, I'll draw a title of what everyone's talking about. Again, this is a 5 foot wide panel that you'll see on my website. But I'm listening and taking notes while they're talking. So in real time, I'm stationed either up in the front of the room, on stage, or way in the back, depending on who wants me where. And I'm drawing the entire over that hour. So I'm filling, 16 square feet of content, taking notes about every topic, every point that speaker makes. If it's a bigger discussion, I'm taking little notes from multiple people. I try to make sure I get everything that's funny. I try to make sure that it tells the story. So I'm trying to tell the story of an event of an hour to give people a sense that weren't there, to give them a sense of what was discussed, and if they were there, to remember it better.
I am curious. What happens? You got all these, illustrations and all these notes. What happens after the event? I'm sure it's very engaging for people to see and to capture. Do the companies keep your drawings? What do they do with them when you're
It's in
finished?
my contract. They keep the drawings when I'm done.
Okay.
Sometimes it's speakers will ask for them. I want to take this home, and if they're if they flew to Tampa and they're from Iowa, it makes it difficult to take a giant panel home. But some will take them home. Sometimes they'll find a driver and they'll carry it back with them to wherever their home base is. They're big, but people like them because it's honoring to speakers, and it says this is what I said and this is what somebody, Matt Orley, thought was important, and they put it out there. Other times, my work ends up in a corporate office or an association office, and it's seen by an entire organization. Sometimes my work, I photograph all my work and color correct it and clean it up and send it back to folks. I've seen it reprinted and free-framed in hospital offices and hallways. You put on shirts. That's like what I have. And then also sent out in a printout form to every attendee of a particular conference. It's just kind of a keepsake.
Yeah. So how did you get into this, into making it like a job and a career
Well,
for you?
I did my first one in 2010, pick a recession. And I answered a Craigslist ad of all things. I worked for a company that was an innovation company that worked for Diebold, which I'm up here in Northeast Ohio. That's an ATM manufacturer and designer. They've been bought since then, but they were talking about digitalization and for money. And this was early before everything went digital. And I showed up. Dylan, I had no business doing what I was doing, but it paid the day. And I bought new markers and really tried, had templates built up and papers all over the place. It was almost a family event. At the end of the event, though, this was a C-suite group. So this was everyone that was, in the boardroom. And one of the guys towards the end of the event said, I had no idea what the heck you guys were talking about until he drew it for me. And when I heard that was like, okay, I added some value here. Fast forward to 2018, 2017, and I loved what I did. It was an enjoyable time. Then I realized that I could do this for a living because I saw other people do this for a living. Like, okay, full speed ahead. let's make this work. And I had background in, I'm an electrical engineer by education. I gave that up for Lent a number of years ago. I switched to working in a wallpaper company doing wall graphics and designs for murals and such that were printed. I worked in sales. I worked in web. So I have an eclectic background that my resume is garbage. It really is, because it's done so many different things. But now all of that experience visiting places, visiting different types of organizations, uh, working with nonprofits, all that just made me who I am. So I'm able to capture and listen pretty well. So I think I have a good head on my shoulders. I just don't direct myself very well. But now I found the best place for me to be, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, going back to 2010, like, how did you even know what to do? Did you practice like listening to speeches at home? Here's how I would do this. How did you know this is a thing?
Well, in 2010, this was me answering an ad for an innovation company that was looking for someone like me. And I don't think the phrase live illustrator, recorder, and it did not exist. So I made the best of it. I just showed up and I listened to the room. And it was probably not my best work, probably wasn't the fastest work that I've done. And it was a different format and feel, but there was a lot of time. I had 2 days to create some graphics, and I had fun. I enjoyed it. It put me in a different spot with different people. And I've learned to just embrace it now.
So so many questions. So you're traveling around, you're doing this now. Are you making these drawings in real time as people are presenting, or like after they give their talks, then you go back and draw?
As people are speaking. So I'm there listening with the audience, and as the speaker finishes up, I'm there figuring out, did he say enough? Did he not say enough? Did I fill my panel? Do I need to add filler? Do I have room for what's the Q&A session? I'm filling up. So when he's done or she is done, the speaker may come up, or attendees will come up, and they'll take pictures of things as they're finished. So real time.
So I'm assuming, obviously, your skill in this has increased listening. How do you know, especially if maybe they tell you how long this speech is, maybe they don't. How do you know, like, what to draw and what is important versus, like, given the space that you have, I should leave that out?
Well, that is the question. Well, the first thing I'll tell you is that no one knows what I didn't draw. They don't remember. I know that's silly, but I try to listen and engage. I'll go up to a speaker beforehand and say, hey, I'm Matt. I'm going to be drawing through your speech. And they'll say, what is this? And I ask them, I tell them briefly what I do. And I ask them, can you give me 30-second overview of your talk? And I'll try to frame out the size and shape of what I'm capturing. I capture every joke that's out there that they share. I do the big headlines, and I try to focus on the parts that were discussed earlier. Sometimes I'll actually get a PowerPoint slide deck, and I'll have that ahead of time, which is really nice, but that only happens about 30% of the time. So it's not very often, but it's helpful to know everything that's coming.
So speaking of this, though, I mean, you're having to listen and draw. So you're listening to them and then you're drawing. What happens if you hear like multiple things worth capturing at the same time? You're trying to like keep that all in your head while also listening to the continue to talk. Like
it's a memory game. It's a hold this in your cache in your brain, like a section of your short-term memory, and you're holding that for 30 seconds as you go to the next thing. If someone says shares a point very quickly, I might write an acronym down on the board that I'm working on, or I might save it I might draw a small picture that I can memorize it, or I'll write the first 3 letters of the word. If there's a list of things, it's as fast as possible. So any way that I can write it down, if it seems extensive, sometimes I'll slide over. I'll take a picture of somebody's screen while they're talking if it's a list of items. So So it's a wide variety of different means of capturing. But I don't think I missed too much. On the rare occasion, I make a spelling mistake, which usually is the word like people, and I forget the second P in the word. So these are second grade words where I mess up. That's because you're focusing and concentrating on the shape of the letter. And if you write, you're excited. I'm so excited to get that next letter down that I missed one. Was at a private school business officers meeting, and they were talking about, they discuss things about finance, about sales and marketing and their students and such. One of the topics was about growth, growing their student base. And so I wrote the word growth, and I wrote big letters that were like 18 inches tall, GRWTH. So with these big giant bubble letters, I missed them. stupid things happen, and you have
Yeah.
to
So
make best of them. So
what
I
do you
made a
do?
joke afterwards. I pointed that, and like zero
Okay.
growth is not reasonable because it was an O that was missing, so it looked like a zero. So it worked out, but
Okay.
you make fun of yourself because
Yeah.
you're doing this in real time, and people appreciate that. It's not it's not
For
a
sure.
hard job. I'm drawing with crayons and markers for a living, but the listening part is strenuous during that hour. You know,
What happens like, do you ever run out of space or you just grab another kind of sheet? Like what happens there?
I work on big giant foam core panels, and usually I try to make it work for one. And I'll try to gauge the pace of the speaker. If I know they have a lot to say, I'll slow down. If they seem boring and dull, which happens on occasion, not very often, but on occasion, I'll start filling things in a little bit more. So my goal is to make things look complete. And I try to make speakers look good, whatever they're doing. I have added a second panel when folks go over, and that works. Sometimes I'll do a top and bottom section where I'll try to draw a graphic between the two so they kind of go together.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The panels that I have are rigid, so they can be moved around and brought out to different areas. So that's hence the bring home conundrum
Yeah.
for speakers.
I'm assuming back in 2010, you're probably pretty nervous, anxious about it. I'm guessing now you're probably like, this is my job. I'm normal. I mean, do you get nervous about it? Or are you kind of like, hey, I'm pretty confident what I'm going to do?
Oh, I'm probably more nervous during this interview than going up in front of the stage,
Yeah.
with 1,000 people.
Yeah.
To be honest, so I'm my back is usually facing people, so I don't see everybody. That first day, that first event where I'm drawing the first mark for a board meeting, all they ended up talking about was their goal founding for this particular organization, which was hard. But I recall that feeling of that angst of putting that first black line that was it curved up and on top to the right. I know that's silly, but that's where that's where the angst started, and after that it disappeared.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting. Now, part of this is, I mean, you're doing companies, organizations all over the map. A lot of these places you probably don't have a much expertise, if at all, on these topics. So how do you? I mean, do you do like some research ahead of time, or does it not really matter because you're just following what the speaker is saying? What do you do?
I try to do. I'll do a little bit of research if I don't know. Certainly, if it's a company, I will review their entire website and learn what's new. If they're launching a new product, I'll ask about it. Sometimes I'll do pre-interview with folks. Other times it's kind of off the cuff. Um, Sometimes I'm learning about things I have no business understanding, but I do my absolute best. I did receive a compliment a few years ago with a client that I've repeated with 8 or 9 times since my start. I was asked if I have a background in tribal law, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. But I just listen well, and a lot of things people talk about, they're the same, and if they're at high level enough, and you know some of the words, or you can borrow a phrase or an idea from another organization or industry, it works out. So I have a good head on my shoulders, and I try to keep up with the world, but there's always something that'll get you. I had I did another a law institute for procurement organization, state procurement, so state procurement officers. And one of the speakers provided a talk about the anatomy of an indemnification clause, and that was the last event, the last session of the day, and it was harsh. I didn't do well. That was early on in my tenure, probably when I didn't learn enough. And this was virtual, so you're sitting in your own in the office and drawing on this screen, and a little bit tough. But that was, I think, my only failure.
Yeah. It sounds like so. Sometimes I guess companies bring you in, and maybe not all the presenters know that they're going to have someone like illustrating what they're doing. Have you ever had someone upset or angry with you, like either a speaker or maybe who's somebody who maybe saw your drawing after and was like, "That's not right"? Have you ever? Has that ever happened?
Well, this shirt was created at an event for engineers. So this is an engineering topic, and it was a procurement office, and I drew power towers and lines. And having that technical background, which was announced at the beginning of the conference, I drew 2 power lines along the side of each tower, but I was corrected 4 or 5 times by individual engineers that came up to me and said, there's supposed to be 3 lines on each side, 3 wires on each side. So that's a technical thing. I've also been in the room where folks are arguing about a particular topic where they don't agree, and that's tough when you feel like, dude, am I supposed to referee here? I don't know. I'm on stage with the speakers. What do I do? So sometimes you're just writing and we don't agree, and that's okay because they're usually focused on another topic. Sometimes things are difficult to draw that I personally might not agree with. I just kind of let those go and don't put them on the panel. If things are, you know, concerning one way or the other. So you hear a lot of things from a lot of people. Everybody has their points of view. So you try to capture what everyone in the room probably agrees on.
Okay. Have you ever been drawing something or whatever and been embarrassed or maybe caught off guard? Like this is maybe you start sketching something and you realize you're sketching the wrong thing or they're talking about something different. Like, has that happened? What do you do in that situation?
Well, I had a speaker. This is one of those sessions where I had a PowerPoint, so I knew exactly what she was going to be talking about. And she gets up on stage and shows her first screen. So I'm drawing my title really big and such. And she says, but because in light of the current industry situation, I'm going to talk about this instead. So I took my panel, I lifted it up really high over my head, I flipped it around, and then brought it back down blank. So I've used the backside.
That's funny.
If I if somebody I'm tracking pretty well. Usually it's me daydreaming for just 40 seconds and then you lose something. So that's,
Yeah.
you can't do that in this. You have to be on for that hour, 45 minutes or 2 hours while people are speaking. But I don't make too many mistakes. Sometimes I'm drawing something and it just doesn't turn out the way that I want if it's a face or something. So I might color over it, or if something looks wrong, I might have a big black spot on the board, or I'll get out my white tape to cover over things. But that's pretty rare. I can usually make something work. Sometimes I'm writing words in a particular order, and I'll combine two different thoughts because I'm holding one thing on my head, but something else is being said right now, and I'll write a sentence, but I'll finish it with the other sentence, and you're like, "What the heck did I just do?" So you look at it and say, "What can I add a word here from the end of this first line or beginning of the second line to make it work?" In rare cases, I'll have to delete and clean up, but it happens. It
Yeah.
happens.
I remember, so before we jump on, I'll tell this story now. I was at a very large church planting conference 7, 8 years ago, and they had a guy like yourself who was a live illustrator. It was a little bit different. He was like drawing like on an iPad or something like that, and then every once in a while they would put his drawing like on the main big screen, like as he was drawing, and then it would go back to the speaker and then go out. And the speaker was telling this story about this guy, I guess in California, who like put a bunch of balloons on this lazy boy and like got drunk and fell asleep. It was a true story, and like went up into the sky. And so he drew he drew these two balloons, so two circles, and then two lines going down, and he started to draw this like recliner, and you
Okay.
can imagine two circles, lines are kind of it looked like a male genitalia. That's what it looked like as he was drawing it, and bro. When it was put up, everybody starts laughing, and then like, of course, he filled it in, whatever. But like, you couldn't unsee it because again, he wasn't blocked, so you could see as he was drawing it, and they just happened to be put up like as he was starting it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know that he ever picked up on it, but we all were like, it was honestly, it was amazing. Yeah, I
I've
felt bad
drawn
for him,
things like
but
that. I've drawn pointing fingers that aren't correct, you know?
yeah,
So you stumble over that kind of thing. You're like, this looks horrible. I had someone say, why does this look like a sperm cell is ruining my talk? Like, all right. So
yeah,
you learn to skip certain things after a while, but you hit that just because you're drawing shapes and they're
hmm
curves, and we're made of curves. That's for sure.
yeah, yeah, that's for sure. So you do a lot of this now.
Yeah.
How do you decide what jobs to take or not take? Are you just open for whatever, or if there's like conflicting dates, how do you decide, what you're gonna do?
Well, I'm in it to make a living, so I'm usually in it and for whatever. I'll skip groups that I don't necessarily want to work with. So I'm not going to reach out to folks. Usually, my work is some cold call. I have a few different methods for getting new clients. Some of it's cold emails and cold calling that I do, and that works out well. Some of it's referral business from someone that sees me because I make billboards wherever I go. Some of it is just the recurring work, and then SEO hits, so search engine optimization, so people find me on the internet. Um, Unless someone's coming, I've never had someone come to me that I don't necessarily appreciate. So I try to, I don't know, I do a mixed bag of of different industries and events, and then if something's new and different and scary, I'll try it out. If it's a clinical medical thing, that's like, ooh, that sounds like fun. Microbiology is tough, but I'll give it a try.
A lot of people in their different fields, we learn, we'll read books, we'll talk with, I'm a pastor, so I'll talk with other pastors. I feel like there's probably not a ton of people. I mean, it's probably maybe more than the average person thinks doing what you do. So, like, where do you go to learn? Who do you talk to, or is it just experience? How do you kind of like continue to develop in your craft?
How did I? Well, sure. I mean, I looked at other folks that are out there and said, what are they doing? How are they creating? I bought books on sketchnoting, sketch notes. So there's you can find literature, you can watch people, you could practice on TED Talks, you can practice with your pastor on Sunday morning. People do that. If there's a talk going on, you can create something to follow along and see how that goes. So that's a way to develop what you're doing. I, I keep busy enough. So usually, last year I drew of the panels that I've discussed. I drew 315 of those, which is a lot. So I'm not working every day, but when I'm drawing, there's 6 a day here, what have you. So I my hands get a workout. My head gets a workout every year. So I don't have to keep going back. I'll play around with things, but I don't have a fixed structure of 4 o'clock is drawing time. Because a lot of it's just the listening, trying to figure out what's new and what's coming. I do all of the parts of my business, so it's the marketing and sales and such. So the bookkeeping, so I do it all for myself. I'm not good with with having extra people help out. I know it's in my bones. So I love working on my own as a solo entrepreneur. But there's items out there to see what other folks are doing. In the United States, there's probably at this time 100, 150 people that do what I do.
Okay.
A lot of them are part-time,
Yeah.
but there's a few of us that are making a living.
Yeah. Speaking of if you had a church, I always have a dream that we'd have somebody at New City Riley that would sketch out. Cause I have some pastor friends who like every once in a while, they have someone in their congregation who does that, like just does it for fun. And I'm like, man, that would be so cool to have someone that could like actually illustrate, what you're saying. I think that'd be awesome. As people hear this, and as you just like talk to people, friends, what you do, people at these conferences you go and speak at, what are some like misconceptions that people have about what it is that you actually do?
A lot of people will ask me to draw them really thin. So I don't necessarily. I'm not a caricature artist. So I don't draw people necessarily. So I'll draw folks something to represent people, but so I don't do that. Sometimes folks think that I need to see the PowerPoint slide deck or to see the speaker speaking, but I usually my head's to the grindstone, my head's to the panel that I'm working on. So all I do is draw what I hear. So that's really a big tenet of what I do. Other misconceptions are they think that they look at my work and see it as a reflection on their skill or their capabilities and say, I hear the phrase, I can't even draw stick figures. I hear that every week. And it's amazing how many people tell me that. And honestly, my mother made fun of my art when I was in grade school. I never took an art class. I didn't know. So I really fell into this, at age, 43, 35, however you want to add it up. And this just started going from there. So maybe I like it, but it's an adult learned skill, drawing.
Yeah.
For me.
I'd love to talk about that for a second. So many people, myself included, I just think in general in life, a lot of times people just think they can't do something and not realizing that so much of what we do is skill. Like you can learn and get better. I mean, talent's important.
Yeah.
So like when people say like, I could never do that, or I can just draw stick figures, I don't know. Like what's, maybe people listen to this, like what's your encouragement to people to like, no, maybe you actually could do this if you put some training
Well,
into it.
I just like what I just said, I tell them this is an adult learned skill. I had no skill before this. My penmanship has improved, 40 times since we all started typing every day. So it's, you can learn this, you can make it happen. And it's just that it's practice, it's experience and putting things together. And I build up for what I do, I kind of build up a mental library of images that I like to create or go to, I have robot A and robot B. When people are talking about AI, I have my dollar signs, how I draw cash, how I draw a box of money or savings or hearts or lockets or security. So I have some things that are go-to for me, and some of those just build into your go-to. So those always look amazing. You can do things when you're an adult. There's nothing stopping you. You don't have to be a child to learn something new. And that's what I do every day. I'm learning something new about a new industry. Next, in 2 weeks, I go to an event that's all about an e-learning company. After that, it's a flooring consortium. After that, it's a Native American finance officers. After that, it's I don't know. It keeps going into a wide variety. So I get to learn every day, and that's what
Yeah.
I like. I
Yeah.
like learning.
So you said this is an adult learned skill. You know, you were doing engineering, a lot of technical stuff before you started doing this. What made you decide to start learning how to draw?
Okay, well, I mentioned that whole list of different jobs. I was working in engineering, designing handheld computers for a barcode scanning company, and I love that. But I found an opportunity literally across the streets to do mural design at a corporate office, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try that. So I put my shingle out to that, and that's where I made the move to, and that was fun. So I bought a book on Photoshop and started learning that, but that was just digital art, and so clicking a mouse here and there. It wasn't actually drawing like this, but just being brave enough and making that first change um, um, with that Craigslist response, that worked out. It's worked
Yeah.
out for me.
But okay, so you're doing this digital stuff and you do this Craigslist stuff. At some point though, you had to start learning how to actually draw. Surely you had been drawing before the Craigslist ad, or you just kind of like
I
went
was
for it.
I was no, I wasn't. I was doing photo editing, so I wasn't really drawing before the
Wow.
Craigslist ad in 2010. That was the first time, and then I kind of put it away. I put it away for years. I wasn't drawing. I picked it up. I don't. My first things were very dull. They were, stick figures with round heads. You start working with basic shapes, basic letters. You say, okay, if I do bullet points, I'm using stars instead of dots. If I'm drawing a line, I'm doing a dotted line with an arrow around it as opposed to just a quick flick of the wrist. So you kind of learn a framework for how things can be, and you see what other people are doing. Like, well, how can I emulate that? So you learn to to find what's out there, and can I draw that myself? And you try, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't, you do another one again. So I did some practice when I first started this company in 2018, to come up with things. I had big paper strategy. It's who I am. I had big paper panels that I had taped to large windows in my house, and I just started going off of topics that were important to me. I had a topic on, all of the different T1D, type 1 diabetes, uh, solutions that might be out there for some family members. I put that together. I drew things about leadership. I drew things that about Bluetooth 5.0 or 4.0 or whatever the newest thing was, and how that could possibly be used. So you draw what you like, and you see what comes of it. You buy big new fancy markers, and you get a few crayons and see what happens.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What has been maybe one of your favorite places that you've gone and been able to draw for?
I did get the opportunity to work in Arizona with Arizona State University, and they had a space convening consortium, or I think that's what it was called. Anyway, this was a year or so ago, and at this hotel, they brought me in to work with astronauts and rocket scientists, and I was tasked with the fun job of drawing spaceships, rocket ships, space stations, moons, planets, and asteroids. Pretty cool. I really enjoyed that, and working with that group, and I had a fun time with that. Working with the Native American finance officers events. I mean, it's kind of a dull accounting conference, but then you add a drum circle and all the things that go into their culture. So that's fun and riotous. I like different companies that are out there, whether it's mapping companies that are creating these amazing overview images, or tech companies that are doing things that I would never imagine you could do with in city government. The it's a wide variety. When you learn something that you didn't even know this existed as a job, or this existed as a sector where people could work. It's fun to see what people do.
Yeah, I imagine since starting this big paper strategy, traveling all over the place, you've learned a ton about jobs, careers, lifestyle. I mean, just like stuff you never knew existed. And I'm sure it's been
Yeah,
pretty fascinating.
my head is often full. When I first started doing this, I was at the end of the day, after drawing for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, I could not speak. My verbal skills disappeared completely. I still suffer that a little bit, but I've gotten way over it, because when you're drawing, you remember things a lot better. And I would draw, and I could memorize and tell you what was said over the course of 6 hours, because I would look in my brain and I could see what I had drawn. over the course of that time. So I had to learn to forget a little bit. The wide variety of industries, it keeps you going. And I remember more than I should sometimes, but sometimes things are applicable. From you learn a word over here and you say that's exactly what they're doing over here. One thing that I found interesting is every industry, so it's an industry association, every industry looks at all the others and says, we're 10 years behind everybody else. But they'll do that to each other. Industry, manufacturing will say, well, 10 years behind restaurants. Restaurants will say they're 10 years behind hotels. Hotels will say they're 10 years behind manufacturing and digitalization, or whatever technology they're talking about. But then they do all these things, and then presentation number 6 of the day is all about AI that they bring forward. So everyone thinks that they're behind, so there's a fear of missing out in technology-wise overall. And certainly during the pandemic or right after, everyone was dealing with workforce issues, and nobody had anybody to work for them, whether it's police officers or accountants or in manufacturing, whatever it was. So our country, and I'm sure the world, struggles with this as we go forward, but it's everybody's problem, not just one. Things are changing a little bit. I hear it less, but it's real.
So you said something, and it makes total sense to me about kind of not being able to really speak after all this work. Different research says different things, that most people can really focus, do deep work for only about 3 to 4 hours a day of like really focused work. You're doing multi-day, multi-hour events. Like, how tired are you at the end? Because you got to be listening, writing. I mean, what do you feel like physically at the end of the day?
Yeah, attendees will come up to me and say, "Your hands must be tired." I'm like, "No, my head is tired. I could draw more physically, but my brain is just worn out over that. Because I say I'm on for that whole day, and when you're on doing that deep thinking, and people are coming up to you and tapping you on your shoulder, saying, "Hey, can you turn around and smile so I can take this photograph?" And you jump up in the air because you're scared. Um, and you're running around and taking your board and running to a different room. So it's there's a lot of spinning the flywheel and hitting again and starting and stopping. So it's difficult. So my head is tired. I've done longer days, but 6 is where 6 hours of drawing. Although I'm on site, 10 hours for a conference. 6 is where I kind of plateau off. I just know my skill level. I've been asked to do a little bit more, but it's harder. It's tough.
Yeah. So you started Big Paper Strategy 2018. I'm assuming you start traveling a little bit, taking some jobs. COVID hits. So how did that affect you and your strategy and what you were doing for those first couple of years once COVID
Well,
hit?
it worked. I had a good pandemic, as pandemics go. I worked and drew virtually, so I had my tablet screen here that I'm drawing on, and I'll draw while a virtual event is going. So all conferences and such moved online, and everybody wanted something besides talking heads, and I was that something else. There weren't a whole lot of options. There were all the online games and such, but I was a good option for people, and there's no travel involved, and I was right there, and I could participate for just 1 hour. So I did webinars and virtual conferences, and half of a day for a virtual conference if they pick and choose what's important. So I learned a lot because that was, 2020 to 2021 was a lot of that early career time, and I learned to draw a lot of different new things, and it was fun being able to be on Google and say, how do I spell that word when you hear it spoken? So I learned a lot. It built up a big library of things that are Code2 graphics that I have that I create in Adobe Illustrator, and PDFs are available pretty much immediately for folks to have and send out and print. So it was a good time.
Yeah. Speaking of spelling words, I mean, you mentioned, for example, you misspelling growth. But what do you do when you don't know how to spell a word? Like they say something and you're like, I
I
don't
have
even know.
my phone with me, and how do I
Oh, really?
spell
Okay.
itinerary, or how do I spell consciousness, or how do I spell? So I'll do those stupid things because I'm always, because your work is going to be seen by everybody. You don't want to miss or screw up. So I'm always double checking words that I know, and I look at it like, oh yeah, I knew that already, but I double check a lot.
Yeah. So, well, how much of it do you do now that is virtual? Is it kind of died off since the people are back traveling, or do you still do a good bit of that?
I've been doing a lot. My best year was last year, and so I've been increasing work every year. Um, I have a lot of recurring customers. I have a number of folks that bring me back every year or twice a year, what have you. So uh, travel is, this is the only world of illustration that was really live that I've in person that I've known, and I'm doing
Mm.
okay. I'm
Yeah.
having a good time. So there's more corporate work now. I'm just watching all the federal government and everything. So there's a couple jobs that I'm not participating in that I probably would have, but there's a lot more that's out there that's in the corporate field or associations that people are ready to hire me. So it's been a good season of writing up contracts for the year.
Do people still ask to do like the Zoom thing, or does that not happen as much
Yeah.
anymore?
It's been going downhill overall. I didn't answer your question. I would say, I mean, it's probably logarithmic in scale in terms of how fast it kind of died down. So a lot more. And I mean, 2021 was a big year. 2022 was a third of my business probably. After that, it was 10%. And this year, I might do one or two. So I,
Yeah.
not too
Do
many.
you like the virtual because it's you don't have to travel, or do you prefer going in person?
It depends on the day. I mean, if I haven't been doing much traveling, I like to get out of the house on occasion. But it's nice that you can wake up and set yourself up for success and get your tech tools ready and just draw and say you're done for the day. So there's pluses and minuses to each. I like being live and with people just because I do let sometimes people clap for me, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
That's good for
that's
your
cool.
brain when
Yeah.
that happens. And there's more work because you paid for the whole day, so it's a mixed bag. But sometimes if you're just working, you're done by noon with the day. Virtual events are good.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you hit on this earlier, kind of growing the business. You hit some phone calls, cold calling at the events. When you go to events, I mean, I'm sure in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, maybe I could get more work out of this, more clients. Somebody might see it, want to hire me for this. So how do you, I mean, when you go into an event, how much of this is, hey, I'm going to try to like market myself a little bit, or I'm just focusing on the event? Like, how do you go about, expanding big paper strategy so more people know about it?
I do simple things. Well, I'll put a QR code on the bottom corner of the boards that I do, maybe half of them. So if people want to find me, they'll find me. And sometimes it takes years. My next event for a school board in New Jersey or a school board group in New Jersey, they hired me from an event from 2023, and this is 2025. So it's a mixed bag. So I don't focus too much. I was probably when I first started, I was very excited when people come up to me and say, "Oh, I want to hire you for such and such thing." But um, those come and go like any sales organization. So it's a lead that may or may not happen. So I just let it play, and I really focus on the customer. Because the attendees that visit a conference are not necessarily my
Right.
specific customer. I mean,
Right.
if they're lawyers for in procurement or if they're running accounting groups for a tribe, they're not going to hire me necessarily for something. They might, or they might know somebody. Sometimes I'll get a call from, hey, my wife was at your conference and saw this, and she wanted me to call you to tell you to come to my company. So that happens on occasion, but I'm more than happy to talk to people over the course of the day, in between sessions and such. But I try to focus on the customer.
Yeah. Now, is there a like a dream customer or client you like would love to draw for at some point?
Um, No, I don't know if I have a dream customer that's out there. I mean, I like the technical folks. I would love to be part of the IEEE group more. That's electrical engineers and work for all of their customers. The technical folks appreciate me more than I thought they would, because I would think I would be somebody that's like, we don't need this artsy extra stuff, but they like it. I can't say I did have I did an event where there was a lot of social workers in the group, and um, they really really liked me, and they I couldn't walk 5 feet without. I was like a celebrity in the conference. I don't know why, but I was a celebrity status because everyone was like, "You did such a good job," and I'm like, "Thank you, I appreciate that," but you know, I, it's good to be appreciated. It's good to do something where you're learning something new. Technology is great when you're doing it, working at an event where people are being helped in some way, shape, or form, or bettering our society. That's rewarding too. So I'm drawing, I walk away when I'm done. So I liked any way that I can connect where I think that I've made a difference. It's good. So that's good for me. But it's hard with this business. I know I'm making an impact then and there, and helping people learn, but that's hard to see that where they're taking that to value. I mean, my customers will hire me again because it's so cool, but um, I like to be valued, I suppose, like everybody does.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, I do want to ask a little bit. You talked about listening a few times and how I mean, you've had to grow this skill. I'm curious, from your job perspective, how that has impacted just like your everyday life, conversations with people. Like, how have you developed the skill of listening maybe differently than how it was 10 years ago before you started doing this all the time?
Um, Great question, Dylan. I've thought about that in my heart of hearts, I suppose. Like, how do I listen when I go to an event? Am I filtering out what I think is just the fluff it? I'm in the conversation, trying to get to the meat of things. Um, I hope it hasn't made me more coarse. But you get all. I mean, as you know, your life changes what you're doing or you're not. I mean, of course, my wife will say, "You did? Were you listening to me?" But that's every guy's
Right.
story. So I don't know how
Yeah.
much that applies. I don't know if I'm worse than others, but that's certainly in there. But it gives me something to talk about. Be going to meeting somebody new can all the things that I've talked about here, and then 150, 700 other stories that are out there for different events. I can talk about a lot of different things. So that gives me a little bit of runway in terms of conversation and topics. But listening, I look at events and I think I'm more cautious. I know what's being said to for attendees as opposed to what the meat of the conversation is, I suppose.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Now, I'm curious too, when you meet people, not at events, but just out in public, that sort of thing, inevitably the topic of like, what do you do comes up. Do you look forward to that question or not? Because I'm guessing you have to explain every single time when someone asks what you do, what it means.
I do, and you can see I've struggled with trying to describe what I do. It's hard to say without seeing it. I like telling people what I do because some people say you have the best job. And I think it's kind of fun. I get to draw with crayons and markers and create something fun for different things. So there's some value in that. Does it come out as braggadocious a little bit? Sometimes I worry about that, so I shut up. Sometimes I think I put, as a lot of guys do, I probably put too much effort into my work. But this is my hobby and my job that I've created for myself. I like what I do, so
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of an identity and an identity issue, but I'm learning to see what's my next hobby outside of work.
Yeah. It's interesting because, some people are like, hey, man, don't make your hobby your job because then you won't like it anymore. But it sounds like you're still enjoying it.
I'm still enjoying it. I've done a different number of different things, but I'm enjoying this because it's different every
Yeah.
day, or at least every week. And
Yeah.
I mean, the act of what I'm actually doing is the same, but there's opportunity to learn new things, meet new people, and figure out how the world works. And as someone that likes the technical parts of things, it's kind of a fun way to go. So a lot of my college classmates that I still connect with, and I get to see sometimes because I get to travel to different places wherever they're at. They don't understand me. They don't know how I don't remember what a Laplace transform is and how it changes from something from the time domain to the frequency domain. I heard that. Like, I don't remember any of the math from college anymore. I just know which green color is different, the 403 or the 401 in my marker set. So I live in a different world.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I don't know anything about this sort of thing, but speaking of markers, is there like a certain brand of crayons markers that you use that you liked? How did you discover your equipment that you
Well,
use?
so I have here. This is from Neuland is the brand that I use, and the tips are replaceable and the ink is refillable. So it
Okay.
gets me a little more coverage when you're buying things. So they're good size. They have a little nub on them, so they don't roll off of the table. So you can see the colors pretty easily from the tip. So it works for me. Crayon wise, oh man, sorry. Let me back up here. Screw with your focus. I'll use flat crayons like these
Oh
little
wow.
things that are good for fillers. So I can create something. They're kind of like basically pastel
Yeah. Yeah.
things, but they're a little less chalky, and so my hands don't mess up. Oh, so here's the thing. So when I'm done with a day or of an
Oh
hour, my
goodness.
hands are just
Yeah.
covered like an eighth grader. So like I have markers all over the place. So maybe I refilled something wrong or I tapped something. So it's amazing
Yeah.
where ink can get when you're
Yeah.
just scribbling. intently for an hour.
Well, speaking of when that happens, sometimes it takes like a couple of days to get that completely off your skin. Do you have like a certain soap or a way to get stuff off your hands the
Yeah,
next
I
day,
know.
or just
It takes like you're washing, you take a shower, but I'll go to bed and then in the morning they seem to be gone. I don't know if it's just rubbing around in sheets or whatever, but they disappear at night. So
yeah?
that's what it is.
That's awesome. Now, as you continue to think about, big paper strategy long term, like what are your hopes and dreams? Is there like a certain amount of jobs you would, in an ideal world, like to take a year? Like, how do you look at that?
Well,
Look at that.
I want to get the kids through college. That's a big thing. I would like to retire someday. So hitting those 300 panels a year and traveling, it's a lot. So is it 70 or 80 days out, the drawings? That's a lot of time away from the house. I mean, there's some months where it's slower. December's empty, July can be a lot slower. So it's a nice summer month off. But you're trying to make a living. Where am I going with it? I don't know. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. It's just myself. So I don't anticipate hiring anybody. I brought my kids with me. I brought my son to draw for me for topics that might interest him. So he went to a clinical event with the doctors and physicians talking about fitness or overweight and diabetes and such. So he really enjoyed that, and I'll have him back fill in colors for me. So I enjoy making it a family affair when I can. But right now it's just me, and I enjoy that. That makes me happy.
Yeah. Now you don't have to give us like specific numbers, but I am curious. As you mentioned, there's maybe 100, 150 people kind of do what you do. How do you figure out like how much to charge? When to increase your rates? How does that work out for you?
Well, like everybody during this time of inflation, I've gone up, and I know there are people that that are just starting out that charge much less than me. I know there are people out there that charge double. I don't know how they can do that, but I think it's just a nice happy medium of how many quotes am I putting out every month, and how many do I win, and to make that work. I really want to increase. I mean, sometimes people, if it's at a conference where there's a trade show component, my work will be sponsored. So sponsored by Chaco or sponsored by PaySmart or whatever it is, and they'll fund me at the conference, which is a nice way to go. So I want to increase my methods and offerings in that arena. So whether it's putting somebody's a company's name on that, visiting their trade show booth, and drawing during they're there while people are walking around. If it's answering or doing attendee engagement type pieces, maybe sometimes I'm doing a lot of listening, but sometimes I'm with the conference group overall, where I am posing a question and putting folks' answers on the board. So where do you think our industry is going to be in 2030? Whatever that might be, and I'm filling that out with answers. So people have this kind of crowdsourced content, and people see that as a FOMO, fear of missing out. They want to get their words on the board and see me draw something. So it's a nice component too, and that's sponsorable too. So dollar wise, it's I think I'm at where the market likes me to be.
Okay. Now, I'm curious your thoughts on this. You mentioned how like some companies, everyone thinks they're 10 years behind. Everyone's talking about AI right now. I mean, what you do is very much drawing in person. It's like if, it'd be kind of obvious. Like if you're up there, obviously you have to be doing it. Like it would take away for a little bit for maybe a computer to be doing it, but maybe not. I don't know. What do you think how AI and these things are going to affect what you do, if at all?
Well, I draw a lot of AI talks. There are a lot of baseline things about what things are, how to use ChatGPT and such. So I get that. I know it's out there. I use AI myself. I will write things up. Sometimes I'll take so you remember that I mentioned earlier, the anatomy of an indemnification clause? Well, I was working for that same organization again this November, and the same guy was coming up. He's talking about other contract components. So, I'm scared because this was like my only failure in 5 or 6 years. They reset myself because it's such a good structure. So anyway, this was one of those groups that I happened to receive a slide deck, PowerPoint slide deck ahead of time. So don't tell anybody, but I took it and I sent it to Claude AI, the whole PDF of that PowerPoint, said, "Hey, Claude, what would you draw?" And he comes back and he gives you an idea based on the topics that are kind of difficult. So I've done that, and it's not accurate or right just because you don't know what someone's going to be talking about versus what they're actually saying. But it's helpful. It's helpful to know. So I've done that before. I'll just write if I know the title of a particular topic, I'll send that off to AI. Say, what would you draw for this topic? And it'll give me like 600 different clip art pieces that I can put together that I grab like two. So it's a mixed bag of different things. So I use it to spark ideas, but in the end, I'm in charge because I'm the one drawing
Yeah, that's interesting.
what things are. But do I worry that AI could do my job? Yeah, but it's so niche and specialized. There's a lot of industries that are going to be there first, well ahead of mine.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, as we talked about, I mean, you got a number of different interests. You've been engineer, technical side, um, type 1 diabetes, we talked about before jumping on. You're also involved in fighting human sex trafficking. You talk a little bit about your work in that sphere and what you do.
Sure. I worked with an organization called Shared Hope International for a number of years. I did some web and digital marketing work previous to drawing. And I've been working with Shared Hopes for 14 years now, on and off. I'm just a very, very small retainer to helping out and to building out some of their digital exposure. And it's been good. I've learned, an electrical engineer who learned a lot about child sex trafficking and what that means for the world and how you need to work against that. That exercises a different chunk of your brain. I've had the opportunity to work with them, digitally, but also I draw now. So with them for their annual conference. So Shared Hope sees me up on stage or off to the side, and I'm drawing through topics that are painful to your heart to listen to, of harsh and terrible stories. And but the good things that people are doing too. So it's one of those challenging components of your life when you're learning hard things.
Well, Matt, this has been really just a fascinating, very unique field that you're in and what you do. If people want to learn more about what you're doing, kind of find you online, where can they go?
Sure. I am at bigpaperstrategy.com. That's Big Paper Strategy, all one word, no spaces or underlines. So you'll find that. You can find my LinkedIn connection there, Instagram. I try to be on X every once in a while, but I'm not very good at it. But that's the long and short of it. Glad to help out anyone that's interested, or just to answer questions about what I do or tools that I use.
Yeah, and we'll link to the website, the social medias in the show notes. So if
Thank
those that
you.
are listening, you can check out all there. Matt, thanks so much for your time and for sharing your story. This has been a very interesting and fascinating conversation.
Appreciate it, Dylan. Thank you so much.